Hello, hello. Good evening, everyone. I hope you've had a good week without causing too much havoc or being too inconvenienced by the mood of the day in Kenya. Hashtag maandamano. I hope you've all been safe and that all is well. Thank you for tuning in. I can see those of you joining. Thank you so much. Suyenka, Ndeshe, Abraham, Ian Kadioki, Jesse Mwao, thank you for joining. I hope you can all hear me fine. If in case we have any quality issues with the sound, please say something early enough so we can fix it so that you don't miss anything. I'm so excited for yet another live session. We like to do these weekly as much as we can control. Thankfully, despite the protests going on today, the team and I are able to do this for this week. So welcome one and all. If you have friends and family that you know are interested in land investment conversations, whether they've bought before or not, please invite them, send them the link for this live, tell them to join. It should be good. And please make sure you only invite the ones that you like and love. And so without much further ado, let's get into it. For today, rather than have me discuss a particular topic and have a monologue for the first half hour, 45 minutes or so, we thought it would be good for us to leave today's session open to all of you who have joined, where we can have conversation. I can answer specific questions you might have about anything about real estate, specifically land investment, because that's our specialty at Goshen Acquisitions and Grand Acres Limited. And in case I am new, I'm a new face to you. My name is Solomon Wangwe. I am the founder and managing director, CEO of Goshen Acquisitions Limited, as well as its wholly owned subsidiary, Grand Acres. In case you're wondering why there's two brand names there. One is a subsidiary of the other, and I happen to be the founder of both. So welcome. Please don't be shy. There is no such thing as a dumb question. If you have anything that's been on your mind, something you've been unsure of, maybe an experience you might want to share as well around land investment, the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's no taboo topic. Please feel free to share those, and we will get on with it. So, just a mom, Kenya. Thank you for your comment. Karibu sana. Gladys Njiru, I see you. Suyanka, Dagzo, thank you for tuning in. Please ask all your questions. Let's make this as interactive as possible, guys. I see Ian Karaoke asking, how can I attend the tea? Thank you for that question, Ian. So the tea is, in case you haven't heard of the tea is a series of YouTube conversations, videos. You can search for that on YouTube. The tea with Pius and Solomon, where my good friend Pius and Pius happens to be the managing director of Nabo Capital, one of Kenya's premier financial services firms, have real conversations about our life experience. We're both in our 40s, mid 40s, have tasted a little bit of salt, as we say in Kiswahili, tumekula chumvi kiasi. And the basic idea is just to share our life journey, mistakes, triumphs, lessons, aspirations, questions with others out there, particularly those who are younger than Pius and I, and that's what the tea is about. So Ian Karaoke, I will have, if you will just DM us, we'll have one of our team members reach out to you directly. Guys, I hope you can hear me. Ian Karaoke wants to attend the tea, and we will make that happen for you on our next live shooting session. So karibu sana. I see a question from Mabare Mildred. And your question reads, what should one consider when buying land? The major factors. Well, that's a loaded question, Mabare Mildred. Again, we've done hundreds of videos about these topics, so it would be difficult for me to know where to start, but I'll just highlight the main ones in my mind, having done this for 11 years here in Kenya. We know a thing or two about land buying. So first thing is have a clearly defined goal. You need to know why you are buying the piece of land. And by that, I mean, do you want to use it for farming? Is it for residential purposes, a primary residence for you? Or is it residential as a rental or for someone else to use as opposed to you? Is it for commercial purposes? Is it for industrial purposes? That sort of thing. Once you have a clearly identified your goal, it'll be a lot easier for you to identify the right location. So having a clear goal is super important. It's step number one. The other thing you have to be clear about along with that is your budgetary constraints or limits. Those can be self-imposed, and sometimes they are imposed on you by your access to capital. So understanding how far you can go will help you save time, so you're not wasting time looking at things that you really have no business looking at. For instance, and I've shared this on video before, if I don't have 400 million shillings available to spend on a land investment, we're not talking about built properties, we're talking about land space. If I don't have 400 million shillings to spend right now, I would not waste my time looking for land in Westlands. Okay, because that's right about where an acre of land sells for in Westlands today. So understanding, and I know I threw a big number out there, but that is applicable all the way down to 100K, whatever the case may be. Understand your limitations, so you're not wasting time looking at things that you cannot bust or move on. Okay, because a lot of times the best deal depends on your ability to move quickly. Okay, so understand what your limitations are. Number three, work with licensed professionals only. And that will start all the way from agents or brokers if you choose to use those to help you scout opportunities. They can be a great resource, especially if you're limited on time to scout on your own. Make sure you work with reputable, preferably licensed entities, okay? Same goes for lawyers. And this is the most critical one for you. You must work with a licensed advocate of the High Court of Kenya, preferably one who specializes in conveyancing matters. And that has to do with property transactions and commercial transactions. They understand what pitfalls to look out for because they deal with this on a day-to-day basis. Do not go to a litigation lawyer to help you with the land transaction or a property transaction. They will miss things that you will not even know are being missed. So work with licensed professionals, even with your lawyer. Same goes for your surveyor. Same goes for your valuers, if you need to have one involved. And this is particularly necessary when you're borrowing from a bank. A lot of times banks will have panels of professionals that you have to pick from because they've been vetted or they understand what format the bank prefers for speedy transaction processing. But you need to know that you're working with licensed individuals all the way through. Okay, so that would be number 3. Very important. A lot of people go wrong with this and get burnt along the way because you don't know what you don't know. So work with licensed professionals. And I would say number 4 would be making use of an escrow account. An escrow account will become important at the point of exchange of money to initiate or complete a transaction. An escrow account is a bank account administered by one of the advocates in a transaction that holds the funds for the transaction in custody for either party or for both parties in some cases. And the reason for this is that you want your monies held by a third party safely, who acts as a referee, if you will, so that once the conditions are met by your seller, you are free and comfortable to release funds to them, and they can do what they need to do to make that property ready for your ownership as far as government approvals are concerned and so on. They need to have comfort that once they go through all that circus, because sometimes it's difficult, it's painful, it takes time, it's also a bit expensive, especially if they have a lawyer to pay as well. They need to have comfort that at the end of that whole journey, there is money available for them to get paid and they don't have to chase you down for it, right? This is where an escrow account becomes important, particularly in Kenya, especially if you are buying off plan. And this is applicable for built homes or apartment units. It's common for people to buy off plan because you get good deals that way, and values go up during construction. By the time you're being given the key to your unit, the property is worth a lot more than what you actually paid. So there's a huge motivation to engage in off plan transactions. And the same is true for land. A lot of land companies in Kenya today will sell plots of land that have not yet been subdivided from pieces of land that they do not even own yet. Okay, this is when escrow accounts become important, because should the company or the seller fail to produce what they have promised you, you need to be able to walk away and get your money back and avoid any further loss besides the time that has elapsed. And by the way, time does have value. So either way, you're going to lose something, but at least don't lose your hard-earned money. Don't pay the seller directly, ever, especially if they do not have a title deed for the unit that you're buying. It's okay to engage in pre-sales, but have the funds waiting in escrow so that your capital is protected. And a lot of Kenyans don't even know that this mechanism exists. A lot of lawyers will not advise or inform their clients of this, and I'm not sure why. I'm saying that off of feedback we get from our customers, from fans such as yourselves, the followers of our content and so on. It's shocking to us that very few people know what an escrow account is and make use of one. Very important. Make sure you use an escrow account. And when you do use one, make sure that the advocate who owns the escrow produces a professional undertaking. That's a technical term for a promissory letter or note, which stipulates the strict conditions under which the funds would move, as agreed to by both parties. Without the professional undertaking, do not leave your money in escrow either, because lawyers can also misbehave. And those would be my 4 biggest pointers on things to look out for. Okay, I hope that helps. For more information on that, please go to www.grandacres.co.ke, and there you will be able to download your free copy of the Grand Acres checklist to safe land buying in Kenya. There's 9 steps, and all the 4 I've mentioned are amongst those 9, and it's absolutely free. So do yourself a favor, get empowered by the information that we've made available, and happy investing to you. Okay. Next question from Evans Olo. I'm planning to plant trees in Imbuko after I clear my balance. What's your input on this? Thank you, Evans. Evans Olo is one of our awesome customers in Imbuko, Imbuko 3 to be specific. which is in southern Kajiado towards the Oloitoktok corridor, just about 42 kilometers before the Amboseli National Park. And so to you, Evans, what I would say is absolutely plant. But places like Imbuko, and I'm sure you noticed, all the way from Mombasa Road to Imbuko, a distance of about 38, 37 kilometers on that highway. And it's actually true all the way to the Tanzanian border at Oloitoktok, which is a 100-kilometer stretch. There's hardly any fenced properties, very few, less than 10 by my count along that highway. A lot of that area, which is all within Kajiado County, is wide open just because the Maasai community, the native inhabitants of that zone, that's just how they deal with land. Porous Maasai we have interacted with on that corridor owns about 310 acres. I've met 20-year-olds whose names are on the title deed to 630 acres, 700 acres. I've met others who own thousands of acres. You know, they don't see the need to fence. Unless you're going to fence on your own, it's not going to happen. Why am I mentioning that? If you're going to plant trees, you're going to need to fence. Otherwise, your trees will be exposed to damage from all sorts of things, from grazers, cows, sheep, goat, idle youth herding cattle who have no understanding of the value of the trees that you're going to be planting. Also, in some cases, wildlife. You will be feeding the wildlife for free, which is not something you want to do because it can be costly depending on how many trees you want to plant. So that would be my advice to anyone. Absolutely plant. Planting trees adds value to property in the interim. It's great for the soil. It's great for creating microclimates that make it more pleasant for your human experience of the site in terms of cooling. It's great for water retention. It's great for beautification. In some cases, depending on what you plant, that can actually be commercially viable later when you can harvest those for this, that, or the other. So 100% plant trees, but make sure you secure your site with fencing, preferably have someone present for security. Otherwise, you risk donating your value to someone or something else. That's a great question. Okay, next one. And Culti Frozen on Instagram asks, apart from the land seller, who else needs to be present for the land board hearing? I understand the seller's family needs to be there. I could be wrong. Okay, that's a good question. So the primary requirement from the land control board is for the seller or the owner of record on the title deed to be present, because they are the ones who are making application to receive a consent from the land board, whether it's for transfer to someone else, whether it's subdivision, whether it's registering a charge or a caution or change of particulars, whatever the case may be. This is true for agricultural land. Anything that has to happen with a title deed that's zoned agricultural in Kenya must obtain land control board consent. The only exception to that we found so far is amalgamation. Amalgamation is a combination of smaller pieces of land into a larger single one. You don't require land control board consent for that. Other than that, everything else you will require land board consent. So seller is required, absolutely. In some cases, they will require the seller's spouse or spouses to be present, particularly when there are multiple spouses. They will require third parties, for instance, who may have a dispute around the property, whether it's neighbors or whoever else. If there's disputes involved with the land control board can request for them to be present. In essence, the land control board has legal right to require anyone else that they feel is necessary to help them render proper judgment. Okay, but as a bare minimum, the seller or the registered owner of record on the title must always be there. I will make this other comment in relation to that. There is no such thing as special board. I'm sure some of you may have heard of that, Special Land Control Board. There is no such thing. It's a term that was coined, I don't know when, that basically facilitated corrupt engagements with the Land Control Board. Why? Because most land control boards meet once a month. Some will meet twice, depends on the zone and the busyness. Those meeting dates are set for up to a year in advance, every year. Okay, so you will know what the calendar is for the entire year in advance. And a lot of times, people don't want to wait for the scheduled land control board hearing date because they're involved in a commercial transaction. If I'm selling land and I want the money now, but the seller is not willing to pay me until I have land control board consent, because without the land control board consent, they cannot transfer the property to themselves, I would be very motivated to take shortcuts. So if the next land board hearing, for instance, for Imbuko in Kajiado, where we're very busy, they meet every last Wednesday of every month. That's a whole month away from today. Okay, we had approvals issued to us just Wednesday of this week, which was yesterday. So if I'm involved in a transaction that has to wait a whole month, I might be incentivized to take shortcuts by bribing the land control board members to issue consent before the next hearing date, even though I have missed the last one. And that is what was generally referred to as special board. Never engage in that for many reasons. I've articulated this in videos. First reason is you will not have a land control board fee receipt that is appropriately dated, because if they're going to backdate your consent to the last formal hearing and yet your receipt is for after, and how do you explain that gap? Number two, you will not be listed in the minutes for the land board date that they will use to issue your consent. Should there ever be an audit done on that file, you will have major problems explaining how you got a letter of consent and yet you were not in the minutes because you did not book in time. Okay, so it's an all-round bad idea to engage in special board arrangements. Just do the right thing, wait a month if you have to, pay the fee, get your government Ministry of Lands receipts, get your booking done, be listed in the minutes, present yourself if you're an interested party, and make sure you get your stuff done right, and that way you have peace, knowing that there's nothing to look at, behind your shoulders for. So I hope that helps. That was a great question. Okay, let's cover one more. Hadi Group, I see you guys. Thank you again for tuning in. I love you guys every week without fail. Thank you. Let's see. Next question. Asmarete on Instagram is asking, where do I get certified surveyor and lawyer? And this is coming from a Kenyan from the diaspora. Okay, so you can get both a surveyor and a lawyer through their professional website. And we will list those for you sometime during this live event. LSK, Law Society of Kenya, is a great place to go and identify lawyers, because at least you know that they are licensed to practice for the year. Same for the surveyors. They have their own body similar to the LSK. I forget what the acronym means, but we will share that with you. But I often find that the best way to get these professionals is through referral. So ask around, ask people who do this on a regular basis. They will have interacted with surveyors and lawyers inevitably. And like ourselves, they may have kissed plenty of frogs before they found their princesses, right? So they will know who's bad and who's good based off of experience, as opposed to going blind from a listing. So ask around. We're happy to make recommendations based on our land buying and selling activity over the last 11 years. So I highly recommend that you take that approach, get referrals from people of good repute, people of integrity. Again, you don't want a crooked person referring a professional who accommodates their crookedness to help you, because you'll just be part of the problem and you may actually make some grave mistakes along the way. So ask the right people and you can get good referrals. Viral food videos is asking Solomon, can I attend a land board virtually if I am in diaspora? Viral food videos, the answer is no. I mean, in theory, whoever attends the land board could patch you in virtually, but that is strictly speaking subject to the chair of the board and at their discretion. It's the reason that's generally difficult is because it's not uncommon to find people purporting to be a land seller or buyer, right? They need to confirm your identity in person. You have to present your identification documents, originals at that, not copies. This is what typically happens. I actually tried to video one of our land board hearing sessions in Kajiado for everyone's benefit, because I do appreciate many people have never attended one, so they don't know what to expect, but they wouldn't even let me video that, and we had to respect their wishes. But typically what happens is they call you in, you present yourself physically along with your original identification documents, that's a national ID or a passport, along with your KRA PIN certificate. The other party may be required to do the same. Along with that, they may require your spouse or spouses to be present. I have heard of cases where people will actually pay some random person to pretend to be their spouse, because in Kenya today, constitutionally, you require spousal consent to sell land or property, right? If you're married to one spouse or to multiple, whatever the case may be, they have to swear an affidavit that they are indeed your spouse. That is attested to by an advocate. Commissioner for Oaths is the accurate term. And they have to present that along with themselves and say, yes, I am the spouse. I accept that this land is being sold and I have no issues, right? So it's very difficult to do that reliably virtually. But if you're in the diaspora, you could write letters in advance, have your lawyer, licensed advocate of the High Court of Kenya that you would have engaged already before you get to the land board hearing part, to engage the land board on your behalf and ask them for what is an acceptable threshold for your participation. Okay, I hope that helps. Another question here from Fancy Chipo. That's a cool name. Fancy Chipo on Instagram. Is the legal fee for drawing a sale agreement standard? No, the answer is no. The Law Society of Kenya has what they call a remuneration order, right? It's basically a schedule of fees chargeable by a licensed advocate for various services. And those are on a graduated scale based on the value of the transaction. So the bigger the value of the transaction, the smaller the percentage of the fees they are supposed to charge you as a minimum. Having said that, nothing stops one advocate from charging 3-4 times than the next one, because they may have more experience, they have a more trusted brand, they're a bigger firm, and that sort of thing. So for that reason, there is no standardized fee for sale agreement preparation. You just need to engage the advocate and negotiate. Ask for what makes sense for you, depending on the scope of the transaction. For instance, just before I got on this call, I was in a very long conference call with one of our advocates, one of the best in the country, just because the transaction we're involved in calls for that. And we were finalizing clauses on a letter of offer we've been working on for almost 2 months now. That's a lot of man hours. Okay, so understandably, my fee for this particular lawyer for preparing this letter of offer and sale agreement is going to be vastly different, more expensive than your standard advocate. Why? Because he has invested a lot of time perfecting this loan, or rather this letter of offer sale agreement, to capture my needs as well as the other parties, because it's a very bespoke transaction. It's not your run-of-the-mill transaction. It's sort of a joint venture that we're trying to work on, and that calls for a lot of expertise, time, man hours, and that sort of thing. So that needs to be appreciated. And so just ask for what you think makes sense, while keeping in mind that these are professionals. If you're working with a licensed one who went to school for years, who had to do pupillage for years, who has had to build a name over years, don't lowball them. It's also disrespectful. And strictly speaking, they are not allowed to charge lower than the remuneration order calls for, because that introduces unfair business practices against their fellow lawyers, their learned friends. So pay the minimum due, and you'll be fine, okay? Always remember, cheaper sometimes is more expensive with these sorts of things. I hope that helps. And yeah, Ahadi Group, there you go. Not a question, but when are the live cameras going up in Nanyuki? We're working on that. It's a lot more difficult than one might imagine to figure out how to mount cameras on a tall structure or pole that does not run out of power. Okay, because there's supposed to be 24-hour live cameras. And this is an initiative we're doing for all our sites, particularly those that have value addition aspects to it. When we've promised to do roads and gatehouses and fencing and pavilions and landscaping and that sort of thing, which I'm super excited about, especially for our diaspora customers, because you're not here to do site visits or come on a random Saturday to see what's going on. You'll be able to do so virtually on demand according to your schedule. And we'll share details on how to do that once we figure out how to mount them and keep them powered 24 hours a day. So I'm hoping we can figure that out over the next 30 to 60 days, Ahadi Group. So thanks for holding us to account. I think you're the only ones who have asked so far. So good stuff. We'll keep you posted on that one. I see another question here from Just a Mom, Kenya. And the question is, so low, how should one negotiate land prices in Kenya? How do you know if you're being swindled or being taken advantage of? Wow. Okay. Again, this is one of those questions where there is no cut and dry answer. Negotiation is a skill as well as I should say it's an art as well as a science. You have to practice and understand the laws of negotiation. Okay, I won't get into those. That's a whole masterclass on its own. But whatever negotiation you're getting into should have a base, and the framework for negotiating has to do with a clear understanding of the pricing structure for the property that you're looking for. That has to do with property valuations in general in the area, what transactions are closing for at the time that you're negotiating, as well as what its potential is to you in the future. And I say that because we have often bought land for way more than we should have paid for it at the time. Why? One of the reasons was that besides liking the owner of the land, we felt that they were trustworthy and that sort of thing. They had clean documentation in an area where there were no clean documents. So in a manner of speaking, they were the only viable option for us in this particular area, and therefore we had to pay what they demanded. Okay, and we were comfortable with that. In some cases, we will pay more to get a deal done faster because we know we can pull out more value than the rest of the market is offering at that time. So therefore, the market values at that time are not as material as they might be. And in many cases, we pay way less than market value Years ago, I bought a property for 60,000 shillings an acre. It was about 11 years ago. I bought a property for 60,000 shillings an acre next to a property that we were already selling at 300,000 shillings an acre. Okay, that is 5 times less than live transactions had proven at the time. Why was that possible? We had a great relationship with the land seller. They were in a distressful situation. They needed money quickly, urgently. They didn't have time to market and advertise and negotiate with 3, 4, 5, 10 buyers before they found the deal. They knew we were next door and that we were looking to buy. They opened up and said, listen, I need money urgently. Just give me this and let's be done. And we were able to get a good deal that way. So sometimes you can get land for much cheaper. How do you know you're being taken advantage of? That's more of an information thing. Again, you need to be knowledgeable about what properties sell for in that general area relative to all its amenities. Okay, a piece of land with nothing but bushes next to the same size piece of land that has water, power, electricity, data cables, gatehouse, security on site, landscaping, very different products. They're not the same. Just because they're the same size in the same place does not mean that they should be valued the same way. Okay, a lot of that is judgmental. You have to simply take a look at the property for yourself and discern the differences between the two. And this is more of a question of value as opposed to price or cost. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So how do you know? You just have to engage, feel the vibes, as the youngins like to say in the office. Feel the vibes. If the vibes are right, pull the trigger. If the vibes are off, disengage and keep looking. Okay, I hope that helps. I know it's not a very scientific answer, but it's a reality. So I'll move on to the next question from Stephen Ajulu on Instagram. Thank you for tuning in, Stephen. And you're asking, how can I ensure that I don't get conned while on the hunt for land or real estate? What are some of the things to confirm and check? Great question, Stephen. I just covered some of those. It was the first question I was asked. The main things to look out for. Please visit www.grandeacres.co.ke. You will find a tab that says checklist, Grand Acres 9 steps to safe land buying in Kenya. It's a Grand Acres checklist. It'll enumerate in detail what you're supposed to do sequentially to avoid getting conned here in Kenya. And we have the privilege of saying that we've never been conned, not in the conventional sense. We've avoided mistakes. We know what to look out for. We've done hundreds of transactions over the last 11, going on 12 years now. So we know a thing or two about how to avoid getting conned. And that's what we put on the list. So be kind to yourself and download it as quickly as you can. It's absolutely free. Ananito on Instagram, you're asking, how can I know value of land around? Okay, I just covered a little bit of this as well. You have to scout. Great way to know. Drive around, ask questions, stop at the duka, at the shop, ask the guys hanging around there. Kenyans know everything about everything. Generally speaking, people will know what property goes for in the area that they are based, so don't be shy. I remember the first piece of land we ever bought in Konza. I literally drove to Maasai homesteads and knocked on their Manyata doors to ask them if they would sell me some land. And many were willing to, and they'll tell you what price they ask you for. Very quickly, you'll start to see a trend on what the general range is, and you'll understand that this is the consensus on what land is valued by the landowners there. Okay, that's a great way to establish land values. Another way is to look at valuation reports. I know there's been a lot of noise made around this issue of the land indexes, the property indexes. Knight Frank has one, Has Consult has one. These are very well known because they've been doing them consistently. They're a good place to start as a pointer. I often find, and I say this with all due deference, that a lot of these indices have a bias towards their approach. You know, if I produce a land index, for instance, as Grand Acres and Goshen Acquisitions, one has to have a healthy amount of suspicion about my motivation for uh, stating that a certain area or location is worth whatever amount, depending on my own exposure in that area, given that I'm in the business of selling land, right? So those are common sense issues that one should look at, but those are a great way to sort of get a feeling for the trends, okay? But I find there is no substitute for being on the ground and asking questions. Interaction with actual land sellers is the best way to do that. I will say though, if it were ever possible, I pray that one day in Kenya it is, the most foolproof way to know what the value of land is in general is to look at tax records. In Kenya, the Kenya Revenue Authority is a custodian of all tax records. They are the ones that we pay our stamp duties to and capital gains tax to for property transactions, given the topic we're discussing. That will generally tell you what transactions are actually closing for, not advertised prices, not asking prices. I can ask all I want for land, but what it actually closes for is what matters. Market value. What is the market value of land? What are people transacting at now in a live sense? The most reliable point of reference for that information is Kenya Revenue Authority's stamp duty records, which unfortunately are not public. That is their data. They do not sell it. They do not provide it to anyone. Unlike more developed markets like in the West, tax records are open, tax values are publicly declared, and those are based on live transactions. In Kenya, that is not yet possible, but should it ever be possible, this would be the most foolproof way to understand what market values are, because it tells you what people are actually closing deals for. Okay? Hope that helps. All right. I see so many of you tuned in. Thank you so much. Ahadi Group, I see another question from you, and it says, I'm in the US. Most real estate agents have a DRE license number that is assigned to them by the board of realtors in their state. Do you think Kenya will go towards this direction or require agents to take a course? Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of conversation about this particular issue. There's about 10 or 12 or so entities that claim to be licensing agencies in Kenya, and they're not, because they are private associations mostly. Licensing agencies need to be anchored in law for them to have any meaning, for them to be able to enforce any policies and hold people to account. This is how it's been structured in the US, in Europe, in the South Americas, and so on, which is why you have licensed agents. In Kenya, that is not yet fully fleshed out. We do have a Kenya Realtors Licensing Board that just recently started to do public education initiatives, posting ads in the dailies. Maybe we'll find that and post that later, where you are required to register as an agent with this entity. It's a parastatal of sorts, where you have to register, go through some training, go through some vetting. If you are involved in the business of negotiating or selling properties on behalf of other parties. Now, that's a difference between an agent and an owner marketer like Grand Acres and Goshen Acquisitions. We are not agents or brokers. We only sell what we own. We don't sell other people's properties. We actually own what we sell. That's very different from an agent, and therefore the requirements on an owner marketer have to be addressed differently. Now, this body is new. A lot of people don't know about it, but there's a lot of activity currently ongoing. I happen to know because I'm involved in one or two of these entities that are trying to get registered as associations to push this agenda so that the government can entrench this licensing issue in law so that you can deal with people properly, just like the Law Society of Kenya can do with advocates or the surveyors board and the likes. So let's stay tuned and let's hope that that gets sorted out sooner rather than later. Okay, I see another question here from Ananito. And your question is, if I buy land from Goshen, can I negotiate price for a parcel of land that is being sold to many buyers before signing a contract? Ananito, that's a great question. The answer for the most part is no. Our prices tend to be fixed and are usually very carefully thought out, because at the end of the day, we have to be competitive in the marketplace. So by the time we're going public with a price, it's fairly fixed. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not open to negotiations, but it's difficult to move us unless you're making more than one purchase at a time. So we do offer volume discounts, for instance, if you're buying more than one parcel of land. Other than that, it's mostly a question of payment terms as opposed to the price. Okay, if that makes sense. So if you want to engage us on that, depending on what you've seen that we're making noise about at the moment, please feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to engage with you on a one-on-one basis, and we'll see if we can, make something happen for you. And in case you're curious, you can do that via WhatsApp through 0700010001. That's 0700010001. It should be scrolling somewhere underneath me, and someone can engage with you and see if we can make something happen. Thank you for that awesome question, Ananito. What was the other question? Find out all the information. Okay. How did it start? Hi, do you offer any financing options for any of your properties? If not, why? Thank you for that question. The answer is 99% of the time, no. We do not finance because this is informed by the commercial restraints that we have, given that we only sell what we own. It's a very capital intensive exercise for us to be able to do that consistently. And so our ability to cycle out our capital when we're selling one of our assets is very important for the health of the business. And we like to avoid financing because statistics show that 60%, 50%, best case scenario, 40% of the time, you're going to be dealing with rescissions or cancellations because people at some point find more important things to do with their money. Family emergency shows up, they decide they'd rather take care of that than make the payment on your land. And then we get into collection issues, which is man hours, which just becomes more expensive. So expensive, it outstrips any interest component we can actually build into the financing. So this is the reason we don't, as Grand Acres. I know there's many other land sellers out there who do, but that's not something we have built into our model. Just now, we are almost sold out on one of our latest projects called the Kili Point, where we have 50 by 100 plots going for 599,000 shillings at the moment. We only have a handful of these remaining. And we did offer 5-month installment plans for this as an experiment just to see, and we did it as a response to, customers like yourself who asked us to make it easier for them to pay for the land. And I do not foresee that as a primary way for us to sell. So what I would say is, if you're interested in looking for customized payment plans, feel free to reach out. We're happy to try and find ways, but you will never see us advertise that as aggressively as other players in the market do. It just doesn't suit our business model. And we'll keep experimenting on different ways to make it easier for customers to engage and achieve their land ownership goals. Okay, that was a good question. Thank you for that. I see one from Emilia Mbaire. Do you accept paying in installments? I just answered that one, Emilia. Thank you. Okay, how did it start? And how did it start? Says, hello, thank you, Solomon, for this great job you are doing. I am a fan. Thank you for saying so. Where is the hottest place to invest in land? Do you have properties in these places? The answer is very, very simple. How did it start? Yes, every place that we have land available now is the hottest place to invest. I know I'm being a bit facetious about that answer, but given that we have to borrow money from lenders, investors to buy land, we're very picky about where we do. It's not something we do lightly. This is actually an aspect in the business that I handle most of. That's one of my primary tasks at Goshen Acquisitions. I am the chief land scout. I'm not about to tie up money that we've borrowed and taken from others in places that are not hot, because we have to be able to sell, obviously. So as facetious as that answer might have been, it's actually true. Places like Nanyuki, super hot. Everyone in the Shosho is making noise about Nanyuki at the moment. We've been in Nanyuki since 2012. The rest are just catching up with us. A few of us discovered Nanyuki a long time ago. And so Nanyuki is a great place to look, okay? Naivasha is another great place, fast growing. It's only an hour drive from Nairobi. And there's many compelling reasons why you cannot ignore Nanyuki or Nakuru, Naivasha, just as you would not ignore Nanyuki. Another great place, in my opinion, is Kenya's coastline. Unfortunately, we don't have anything at the coast yet to make noise about, but we're actively scouting and would be. You will hear about it when we do, because we're going to be screaming it from everywhere. So stay tuned for that. If you're particularly interested in any specific zone, feel free to reach out, DM us, send a message on WhatsApp with your details and let us know. We very often do create early bird lists based on specific requests made by our followers and customers. If there's enough people looking for land in a particular place, we will actually go out of our way to find something there to make available to you. And when we do, you will often be told before we ever advertise it publicly, so that you get the best deal possible as an early bird buyer. So feel free to share that information in case you do. The number again is 07-001-0001. That's 07-001-0001, and we'll be happy to engage with you. Awesome. Lots of great questions. Please keep them coming. We have 7 minutes remaining, 6 minutes now. Like I said before, there is no such thing as a dumb question. We'll be able to answer those within the time that we do. So please send those in. Don't be shy. Great questions so far, but keep them coming. I see one here from DFW Sudo. Do you sell land to foreigners, and if what documents am I required to present? Yes, we do. In Kenya, foreigners can only own leasehold properties. foreigner cannot own freehold property. Okay, so in instances where we have freehold properties to sell, and a foreigner is interested, we actually go through the process of changing that land tenure from freehold to leasehold so that the foreigner can be registered as the owner of record officially. So yes, in some cases like our Olkekun project in Naivasha, these were already pre-existing leasehold, so they are available to both Kenyan and foreign buyers or ownership. But in the event that we don't have it as a leasehold already, we go through the process. And we're doing that right now for, I think, two customers, two foreign customers who want or would prefer to be registered as the owner, which I highly recommend. I know people propose all sorts of shortcuts and loopholes to use for a foreigner to own freehold land, but it is virtually impossible for that to happen in a manner that is safe to the foreigner. So best thing to do is simply convert from freehold to leasehold, and the foreigner can own it without issue. And in terms of documentation, same as a Kenyan would be required. Your identification documents, ID, passport, tax number, postal address, that's all that's required, and your ownership can be registered even as a foreigner. That's a great question. Let's see. Nanito, another question, and more like a comment. And you say, coast is hard to get green cards. I see you made the correction. Coast is hard to get green cards when doing due diligence. Yes, green cards are generally difficult to get, regardless of where you are. The coast is especially tough because of all the fraud that goes on at the coast, because the coast is very desirable. A lot of people want to own the coast, so it's attracted a lot of fraudsters and cartels and this, that, and the other. So the green cards are that much more guarded by their custodians, which is the Ministry of Lands registrars. So yes, it is difficult. Nevertheless, you cannot skip that step. It's we find it a lot easier for a licensed advocate to requisition one as opposed to you as an individual, because as an individual, you're immediately suspect. What's your motivation? Who are you if you're not the owner of the land? Why are you asking for the green card? Why? Because the green card is the mother of all documents on property matters in Kenya. Green cards are what give birth to title deeds, so they're extremely important, and therefore they're very toughly guarded. So if you're not a licensed advocate who has a pretext for asking for these officially or formally, it'll be difficult for you to do as an individual. So we recommend that, again, work with licensed advocates of the High Court of Kenya to help you with your due diligence. They can be a lot more efficient than you would be as an individual, okay? Let's see, I think we have enough time for one more question. Wow, Lewin. Wow_Lewin. How can I be a part of your team? Lewin, come pay us a visit and come tell us why you should be part of this awesome group of people back here. Let us know what you bring into the table, okay? Very simple. Reach out on WhatsApp. Someone will direct you on how to get us your CV. And thank you for asking. I see another question here from GK Gaming. How do you do due diligence on due diligence when some say ploti yao ni safi? I'm not sure I understand what you're asking there, GK. How do you do diligence or due diligence? Due diligence when some say ploti yao ni safi? Very simple. Download our checklist, Grand Acres checklist, 9 steps to safe land buying in Kenya. It's really that simple, guys. It's not rocket science. We've enumerated every step you are to take along that process to make sure that even when they say clean title ready, ploti zetu ni safi, you will be able to confirm or disprove it very quickly. So again, do yourself a favor. It's a free resource we have offered to you. It's on our website, www.grandacres.co.ke, and look for the Grand Acres checklist. It'll save you a ton of headache, okay? And a good way to end that statement would be, again, work with licensed professionals. Don't take any shortcuts. Respect your hustle, respect your capital, and do the right thing. All right, so it's now 8 p.m. I like to be respectful of all your time. Thank you so much for tuning in. Where Oliskia Wapi? The answer is no. Unfortunately, we don't have land in Kitale yet, but stay tuned. We're constantly scouting, and we'll make sure to reach out to you when we do. Thank you again for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of this conversation, asking your questions. If you have any more, send them through DM, WhatsApp. We'll continually answer them even after this session, tomorrow, the day after. I love to share our experiences because that's how we all get enlightened. You may have something you could share as well from an experience you've had that could save us trouble on something. So feel free to share. Let's help one another get busy about owning land in Kenya and owning our own country. So with those few words, I say God bless you all, and I look forward to next week. Cheers.